$600 Faye deposited into her accounts, that's not what authorities fixate on, because Tootie tells them that she knows Faye did make it home safe and sound after bingo because another person living in Faye's apartment saw her.
Who?
That was Faye's longtime partner and fiance, Sebastian Chavez. He and Faye lived together at the Barracks West apartment, and they've been a couple for like 20 years at this point.
And is this Tootie's dad?
No, so Tootie's actually older. She is Faye's daughter from a previous relationship, but Sebastian and Faye do have a 19-year-old son together named Tony. And Sharonda told us that for most of Tootie's life, though, Sebastian was in the picture and was definitely like a parental type figure to her.
And where does Tony live during this time?
So he's actually a few hours out of state. He's living in Maryland because he was enlisted in the Army Reserve. So it was just Faye and Sebastian living in the apartment at Barracks West.
Got it.
So when Detective Newberry learns about Sebastian, he immediately tries to get a hold of him, which actually is really easy because they find out he's already there on scene too, like in the crowd of people gathered at the crime scene.
Oh.
When authorities pull him aside, he explains that he learned about what was happening the same way Tootie did, like probably got a picture, someone called him, whatever, and he came as soon as he could. Detective Newberry says he can visibly see that this guy is genuinely upset. He is distraught. But just as a precaution, he asks Sebastian to come down to the police station for a more formal interview there so they can learn more about his and Faye's relationship. Sebastian readily agrees, and he sits down with them. He tells detectives that the last time he saw Faye was around 1 or 1:30 earlier that morning. Just like Tootie has said, Sebastian confirms that Faye had gone out to play bingo at the VFW and then had got home. Now, he says that he had fallen asleep on their couch while watching television, and the last thing he remembers was seeing Faye go into their bedroom. But he thinks that at some point while he was asleep, that she left their apartment. And he didn't wake up until his phone started going off on Saturday morning with people telling him to get over to Prospect Avenue.
So when she left that morning, did he know where she was going?
No, he says he didn't. And when authorities press him about why Faye would even have been in that part of town, that Prospect Avenue area, he says he has no idea why their car would have ended up over there. Because he's like, listen, she didn't mention any plans about going to meet up with anyone who lived on Prospect Avenue. So he's just as perplexed by the crime scene's location as detectives are.
He's perplexed just about the location?
Well, no, I mean, he's perplexed about the whole thing. The location is just ultra odd.
Okay.
But, I mean, he's really saying, like, he doesn't know why anyone would even want to harm her. But Detective Newberry and his colleagues keep pushing Sebastian. I mean, they want to know more about their relationship. And they learn that he and Faye had met 2 decades earlier while together at the Veterans Administration Hospital in Salem, Virginia. Shortly after hitting it off, they started dating, and then Faye got pregnant with Tony, so the two decided to get engaged. But their engagement had been a slow one. After having Tony, they spent several years kind of moving around between different apartments in the city and working various jobs, just trying to make ends meet. And they never put a lot of emphasis on making things official. And by 2012, their relationship was more of a life partner kind of thing. At least that's how Sharonda Washington described it to Delia. But Sebastian played an important role in Faye's life, and more than even her partner, he was kind of her caretaker. Because according to her family and friends, Faye experienced a lot of health issues, both physically and mentally, starting in her early 20s. Because during the 1980s, when she had been in the Army, she had had a traumatic brain injury after falling from a military vehicle. And that accident ended her career in the military. She was discharged, but she never really fully recovered. In fact, there was a short period of time where Barbara, who remember is Faye's mom, Barbara had helped care for Tootie and Tony because Faye was unable to. One news article published by the Daily Progress states that Faye was formally diagnosed with bipolar disorder at some point in her life before her murder and was on a specific medication to help her manage her condition. But Sebastian told police that leading up to the crime, Faye had been regularly taking her meds, and he had been helping her whenever she needed support. Financially, though, he wasn't working. He had actually just lost his job as a car salesman a few weeks before all this, so most of the money they lived off of came from Faye's veteran disability benefits and whatever income Sebastian could contribute from his military benefits or wages. And all that background is fine and good. It helps understand, who they are. It kind of sets the scene. But what investigators really want to know is, what was his relationship like with Faye day to day? Did they ever fight? If so, about what? Did they have any major problems? And that is when Sebastian drops a bombshell. He tells Detective Newberry there is something kind of important he needs to come clean to police about. He's been cheating on Faye for a while.
If you guys didn't know already, we are a Simply Safe fam. We have had a Simply Safe home security system everywhere we've lived for the past 7 years, I think. And every time I think Simply Safe has truly outdone themselves in incredibly integrated and intuitive technology, they revolutionized the home monitoring game once again. This time with the new Smart Alarm wireless indoor camera. With a fast protect monitoring plan, the new Smart Alarm indoor camera works seamlessly with 24/7 live guard protection as part of an entire Simply Safe system to keep your home safe from break-ins, fires, floods, and more. And this is such a game changer. Now, if an intruder dares to break into your home, Simply Safe monitoring agents can see, speak to, and deter intruders in real time. Plus, the new Smart Alarm wireless indoor camera is the only indoor security camera that can actually trigger the alarm and instantly deter intruders with a built-in siren. As much as I love the protection this gives me, sometimes I want my privacy too, and Simply Safe thought of that. Of course they did. It has a physical privacy shutter to provide protection when you need it and privacy when you want it. Truly the best of both worlds. For a limited time, get 20% off your new system when you sign up for Fast Protect monitoring. Visit simplysafe.com/crimejunkie. That's simplysafe.com/crimejunkie. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Detective Newberry and his colleagues are completely taken aback when Sebastian tells them this.
Honestly, same. I can't even remember the last time we covered a case where someone was so upfront with police about having an affair.
Right?
Actually, they have to find out about it after being lied to
a bunch of times,
weeks or months, and then it's not even the person who tells them. They find out some other way.
Yeah, and they corner the person, and the person's like, "No, I swear it's not true."
Yeah.
And then they confront him. They're like, "Oh, okay, I should probably let you know." No, this is kind of weird, right? But
yeah,
call it coming clean, call it full cooperation. It doesn't really matter because Sebastian doesn't just reveal this big secret. He gives the police the full details and names to go along with them. He tells detectives that most recently, the woman he's been seeing lives in an apartment on Hardy Drive, which is a street several miles away from the apartment that he shares with Faye. He says that he and this woman, who we're going to call Amy, mostly have a sexual relationship, and he sometimes even pays her money in exchange for sex. And the thing is, Amy, he says, is cheating too, because she has a full-time boyfriend/fiance who we'll call Roy, who also lives in an apartment on Hardy Drive. Though, important to note, it's not the same apartment as Amy. Roy lived in a unit with his mom, in the same complex.
got it.
Now, here's what's wild. Hardy Drive, where Amy and Roy both live, it turns out Tootie, Faye's daughter, also lives on Hardy Drive in the same set of apartments as Roy and Amy, but just on the opposite end of the street.
So, hold up. How long has this affair been going on?
Well, according to what Sebastian tells police, we're talking months, if not years.
And they never got caught.
Well, not never. Sebastian tells Newberry that at some point, shortly before Faye's murder, he thinks that Faye might have become suspicious and tried to uncover what was going on between him and Amy over on Hardy Drive.
Did she see them together or something?
But no, she didn't see them. But Sharonda told us that a few weeks before Faye's death, Tootie had learned from some other people on the street that Sebastian was messing around with Amy. And these rumors were coming from multiple people, which made her feel like they were probably legit. But Tootie didn't go straight to her mom. She didn't know what to do. So she actually went to Sharonda first. And Sharonda kind of cautioned her to just stay out of the whole thing, to not tell her mom because it would do more harm than good. But Tootie couldn't. She couldn't keep that secret.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd be able to either.
I know, it is a big secret to keep from your mom, of all people. And so eventually she broke the news to Faye that she had heard Sebastian was carrying on an affair with a woman who lived on Hardy Drive.
Okay, I've got two questions. First, what's the timing of this? How soon before Faye was killed did Tootie tell her all this? Are we talking like months, weeks, days? I mean...
Yeah, Sharonda told Delia that Tootie told this all to Faye. So I don't know when Tootie found out, but she told Faye about the affair like a few weeks before the murder.
Okay, second question. How far away is Hardy Drive from Prospect Avenue?
So that's the thing, it's pretty close. We're talking 1.2 miles, which is, yeah, I like mapped it out as a drive. It's like a 5-minute drive.
Yeah, it's just around the corner.
Mm-hmm. So Sebastian gives detectives Roy and Amy's real names, and while investigators are trying to track them down to verify his story, they take a look at Faye's cell phone activity from the early morning hours of Saturday, July 14th. And that's when they realize that in addition to that early morning phone call that we know she made to Tootie's phone, you know, the one that Tootie missed, Faye had also called or been called by another number. And it was Roy's.
What time did that happen?
So Newberry didn't exactly say. All he would confirm is that the call between Faye's cell phone and Roy's happened sometime before those gunshots were heard at 5:30 a.m.
So Faye's not going to confront Amy. She's going to Roy because he's in the same boat as she is.
Right, that's what it seems like is maybe happening. Now, by this point, detectives have located Roy at his relative's home in a nearby county, and when they call him up, he agrees to come to the Charlottesville Police Department and speak with investigators. He tells them that Faye did in fact call him before 5 a.m. on Saturday morning because she wanted to speak with him in person about the relationship that their significant others were carrying on behind their backs. So Roy says that shortly after Faye called him, she showed up at his mother's apartment on Hardy Drive, which is where he was living again. And the two of them talk about this love triangle or square. I don't even know what it is, this whole situation. And Roy says that neither he or Faye were happy with their significant other's choices to cheat, obviously, and they kind of agreed that this needs to just stop. Now, shortly before their conversation ended, this is where things get weird. So Roy says that this guy that he had seen kind of around Hardy Drive, who he didn't really know, just shows up at his mom's apartment and asks for a ride to Prospect Avenue.
What? Are they like standing outside having this conversation?
Yeah, I don't know. The details are fuzzy here. I don't know if he knocks on the door. I don't know if they're standing outside, whatever. But this guy shows up, and eventually Faye speaks up and said that she could give this guy a ride to Prospect Avenue. And then Roy says at the last minute he decides to go with them. However, when they arrive in the 800 block area and Faye parks her car, the stranger doesn't get out. He just up and pulls out a gun and shoots Faye. And Roy tells police that in that moment, he panicked and jumped out of the car and took off running, leaving Faye and her shooter behind. Now, it takes him less than 20 minutes to get back to his mom's apartment, where he says that he lays low, and he says he doesn't call the police because he is afraid that the guy who shot Faye will come back to his mom's house and kill him, which, I mean, because he knows where he lives or whatever.
Ashley, I have so many questions.
I know, right? And for CPD detectives, same. There is so much about this story that just feels bizarre. I mean, he's essentially admitted to being a witness to a murder and not calling police, but he also has this weird interpersonal, again, love triangle square mess with Faye and Sebastian and Amy. So the detectives are like, okay, hold up a minute. This doesn't feel right. And so they ask him more about the man who he says killed Faye. He tells them he doesn't know the guy's name, but he's a frequent visitor on Hardy Drive. He describes the shooter as a light-skinned black man with a thin beard and patch of hair on his chin. He says he's between 5'8", 5'11", has tattoos on both of his arms with cursive letters and tattoos on each of his hands that might have an M and a C.
All that seems like really specific information and kind of a lot of it for a guy who says he doesn't know and
It is.
hasn't really spent a lot of time with.
It is, right? So, which is why investigators don't just write off Roy's story right away, as weird as it seems. Because, I mean, this person he's describing, this is like super detailed, like you said. So they can't just assume that this mystery guy doesn't exist. They at least have to put some effort into looking for him. So the next day, which is now Sunday, July 15th.
Whoa. All this happened in a day?
Oh, yeah. This is moving like fast.
Yeah, this is moving really quickly.
Yeah, which honestly is kind of hopeful, right? Like if you're getting this much right off the bat, I think they're feeling like they're gonna solve this.
Yeah.
But anyways, the next day, CPD issues a release providing the public with the suspect description that they got from Roy. But when they release it, they don't publicly say where the information came from. And no one, I mean, other than Detective Newberry and his colleagues, know about Sebastian's affair or Amy or Roy.
Well, other than the people in the family who knew, like Tootie and Sharonda.
Right, I just mean like they didn't release that information to the media at the time.
Oh, okay, got it.
They don't want to give away too much yet, and they don't want to distract from the main goal, which is for people in the community to help them identify whoever this strange person is so they can figure out if he's even real, if he was involved, or if Roy is lying. Now, in the meantime, Detective Newberry and other CPD officers go out and comb the streets between the crime scene and Roy's mother's apartment. They want to see if there's any evidence or surveillance footage along that mile stretch that Roy said he took that either can corroborate or that maybe conflicts with his version of events. And what they find is super interesting.
As a parent, no 2 days are ever the same. And let's face it, sometimes a little extra help goes a really long way. That's what's so great about Care.com. They make it easier than ever to find local, experienced, and background check childcare to help manage your family's ever-changing needs and schedule. Whether you need an after-school sitter or help with homework, there's a large selection to choose from. And all caregivers who use Care.com are required to a complete background check before they're able to interact with families on the platform. It's so easy. Just go to Care.com and post a job for caregivers to apply. You can search for qualified candidates, view profiles, read reviews and ratings, check their availability, send messages directly, and more. Sign up now and see why over 3 million families use this amazing platform. Get the help you need to make it all work for your family at Care.com. That's Care.com.
Fall is just around the corner, and home is the center of it all. At Ashley, seasonal decorating's a breeze with their range of designs and materials. Snuggle up on a family-friendly sectional or an ultra-modern sofa. Or gather outside and enjoy the crisp, cool air with a new fire pit or conversation set. From minor refreshes to total overhauls, Ashley has the essentials to make your home fall functional and fabulous. Shop in-store or visit ashley.com today.
There is a convenience store between Prospect Avenue and Harheap Drive. So the detectives went in and they asked the clerk if they have any video there, or if this clerk happened to even see anything weird himself the morning of the 14th. And they catch a lucky break. The clerk tells them, yeah, this guy did come in by himself, not wearing any shoes, and he also seemed to be really shaken up and acting nervous. Now, Newberry told Delia in his interview that surveillance footage from the store confirmed that the man the clerk interacted with was Roy.
What?
And in the video, Roy walks in shortly after 5:30 a.m. and just like the clerk said, he's not wearing any shoes, which is kind of strange. And I had about 15 questions specifically around this.
Same.
Yeah, but it was something that Newberry wouldn't elaborate on. All he would say about this whole interaction at the store is that Roy stays in the store for a little bit. Roy talks with the clerk, and then Roy leaves.
Did he buy anything? What did he buy? Is there any blood on him?
All of those were part of my 15 questions, and we asked him, but Newberry didn't want to answer any of those.
Okay, what did Roy and the clerk talk about?
Nope, that's another thing he would not elaborate on. All he would say is that The statements Roy made to the clerk are significant enough to the investigation that he feels uncomfortable, even to this day, releasing that information for broadcast. Now, there are no other stores between that shop and Roy's mom's apartment that catch a glimpse of him on camera. So it's just this one snippet in time that authorities have to work with.
Okay, so Newberry said that the statements were significant enough to not, release, right?
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean that CPD is considering Roy a suspect?
Not quite. So during his initial interview, they categorize him as a strong person of interest. Same thing goes for his girlfriend Amy, who they do end up talking to, but she's honestly not even very helpful. She just tells detectives that her relationship with Roy is definitely personal, but when it comes to intimacy, things are a bit open between them. Newberry told Delia that over the course of speaking with Amy, they learned that she may have engaged in sex work, an arrangement that Roy was aware of. And it's possible he even benefited from Amy's earnings and had knowledge of who her clients were, including Sebastian Chavez.
So it might not have even been news to Roy when they contacted him.
It might not have been. So whether Roy and Amy were less boyfriend and girlfriend and more of some type of working relationship, or maybe even something darker, I don't know. It's hard to know for sure without more information. Now, according to the podcast, Small Town Big Crime, Amy either wasn't at or didn't see Faye at Roy's mom's apartment when Faye was there shortly before her murder. But Amy had gone over to Roy's after the crime and seen him shortly after he returned from Prospect Avenue. But she didn't indicate to police one way or the other whether she thought Roy was involved in what happened to Faye.
So she's basically just not talking.
Kinda, yeah. Now, the suspect information about the man with the cursive tattoos continues to circulate for a few days, but authorities don't get any calls from people saying that they recognize this man or any man who matches that description, which just makes CPD even more convinced that Roy is hiding something, or at a minimum, not telling them the whole truth.
Well, yeah, and am I making this up, or did you say that when they first went to track him down, he was, in another county over?
Yeah, you did not make that up.
So, am I the only one who thinks it's weird that within a day of the murder, he gets the heck out of Dodge?
Oh, but it's weird. It's even weirder when you know the details, because Roy and his mom left town, and you say the day or so after the murder, they left the morning Faye was killed.
Oh.
Yeah, when detectives questioned Roy about that trip, he tells them that it was just this spur-of-the-moment decision, that they went to a family member's property somewhere over in nearby Buckingham County.
A spur-of-the-moment decision to travel at the ass crack of dawn? No thank you.
I don't know exactly what time they left, but yeah, last-minute trip that morning. It's weird. So when authorities speak with his mom, she vouches for Roy, says all the same stuff he said. How Faye came over to the apartment in the middle of the night on Saturday. She left with Roy and this stranger, and then a little while later, Roy came home, and they left to go on this spur-of-the-moment trip to their relative's house outside of Charlottesville. But, again, we're side-eyeing. Investigators are a little side-eyed. They're at least not convinced. So they spend the next few days doing a deep dive on Roy. And they actually find a picture on his social media that shows him posing with a gun that they believe could shoot the same type of ammunition as the 2 spent shell casings found in Faye's Honda. Now again, this is all information police are learning behind the scenes. It is not information that goes out to the public or even to anyone in Faye's family. But while I'm on the topic of firearms, a few days after Faye's murder, this would have been Friday, July 20th, the medical examiner in Richmond released information about the autopsy examination, and though most of the results are sealed due to the ongoing investigation, the ME does release that Faye was shot twice in the head and neck, and that her official manner of death is homicide. What's kind of wild, though, is that Newberry told our team that the bullets that killed Faye stayed in her, meaning police had a hard time figuring out the trajectory of where the shooter was positioned in her vehicle when they shot her. And to complicate things, Roy's story about where he was sitting and where this mystery man was sitting during the shooting varied wildly during his first interview with police. So this was like another thing that I had a ton of questions on, right? Because I'm like, if you can figure out, was the person in the back seat? Were they in the front seat? Were there multiple people in the car? I don't know.
It helps give you a picture of something.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So this was another one that we asked a lot of questions about, and Newberry wouldn't go into a ton of detail about the topic, but he did say that figuring out exactly where the shots came from inside the Honda has been a huge challenge. Over the years, CPD has even brought in 3D reconstruction technology, but even the findings from those
Menendez, presenter on the BBC's NewsHour. My colleagues and I enjoy broadcasting our programme around the world from the WVXU studio in Cincinnati. Thank you for listening.
To have. Though they have provided some helpful information, just not a ton.
Right, like not enough.
Yeah, and basically, like what he would say is to this day, he believes the same thing he did when he first came upon the scene all those years ago, that Faye was taken completely by surprise, likely by an assailant who was sitting right next to or slightly behind her, and he doesn't think she had any time to react. So the public, the police, everyone's kind of getting a little bit more information about what happened to Faye. And the same day that her manner and cause of death are released, Faye's family holds a vigil in her memory. The next day, July 21st, which is now a full week after the crime, they lay Faye to rest at First Baptist Church in Charlottesville. Law enforcement issues a $2,500 reward for information, but behind closed doors, Detective Newberry and his colleagues continue to pursue the Roy and Amy.
So, I get that's clearly the best lead they have right now, but I guess I don't get it. If police think Roy is lying and he's actually the shooter, why would he kill Faye? Like, what's his motive? Like, he's being cheated on too? That's the motive?
I know.
I think he knew about that, so it wasn't a surprise? I don't understand.
I know. It's hard to wrap my head around too. And the answer, according to Newberry, is one CPD investigators still can't figure out. I mean, that really is the biggest question in their investigation, even this many years later. The one theory that Newberry floated to us that he thinks is possible is that Roy may have wanted to eliminate Faye because she might have confronted him about his treatment of Amy or women in general who do sex work. I mean, it's not super clear, but the main takeaway is that I think police believe something was said or conveyed between Faye and Roy that fateful morning in her car that could have pushed Roy to kill her for some reason and then take her wallet and purse to either make it look like a robbery or just because it was an actual robbery.
Okay, but the location, she went to him on Hardy Drive. Why are they on Prospect Avenue? Her car wasn't moved after she was shot.
I know, that's a piece of the puzzle that's missing, and that's what I can't wrap my head around either, because it's not like her car was dumped there. They were on Prospect Avenue for some reason, and that's where she was shot, and that doesn't add up to me.
So, what's Roy's history? Does he have any sort of rap sheet?
A long one in Charlottesville. I mean, things like assault, he, I think, has one for a hit and run, larceny, and grand theft. I mean, he's been in and out of jail there several times. And Amy, his girlfriend, in 2012, she also had a lengthy criminal record in Charlottesville for drug possession, contempt, larceny, and malicious wounding. And this is so weird. I didn't even know if I was going to bring it up because it's just so strange and I don't know what it means. And actually, spoiler alert, Newberry says it means nothing, but it's still just so weird, I have to tell you. So public records show that Amy was charged with that malicious wounding incident on the day that Faye was murdered.
What?
Yeah, but those charges were later dropped, and the court records are sealed for that offense, so we couldn't see what exactly the circumstances were or who else might have been involved or why those malicious wounding charges just happened to occur on the...
crazy. Gotta get back to Hamilton. Work. Probably pick up some Subway and then go to my office. This took a big chunk of my day. I was in Oxford doing some, I don't know what you call it, I guess just riding the route with drivers and our transit coordinator. Couple of issues out there in the Oxford routes. One, the buses run so frequently, and then there's also foot traffic because of the college town. The buses start to kind of bunch up at certain locations at certain times of the day, depending on traffic. We got bunching issues, and then we also have timing issues where when we do have a lot of foot traffic or car traffic, then the buses are perpetually late, which then gives them pressure to move faster, barely stop at their stops, try to gain back some time and kind of sacrifice their own time, so then they don't have breaks. So I need to adjust their times and maybe have a pair of buses stopping at different or starting at different locations in the city to prevent bunching. And hopefully that makes everyone happy. We don't have people quitting, so that's what I'm thinking about. The other dilemma is I give them layover time, but during trips that they don't have bad traffic or anything, they're going to be super early. They're going to have, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of layover. And if we consistently have 10 minutes every trip to hang out, I don't know. Doesn't seem as efficient. Unless I give them more time, kind of, I don't know if I'd have to manually enter this, but if I somehow I figure out peak times when there's a lot of foot traffic, car traffic, give them an extra 5-7 minutes during those particular trips. But then the problem with that is that you don't have a consistent clock face, and you know, folks that are relying on a consistent schedule won't really have that. But then I'm thinking, who's actually, in terms of majority, who's actually looking at clock face and who's just looking at the bus app to see where they are on the route? If the majority is just looking at the app, then yeah, we could make the clock face whatever, constantly fluctuating based on peak and all that. If we got kind of paper schedule readers, then we're gonna screw them up. If those riders can't make plans around a consistent schedule. What to do? A part of me is thinking, you know, the buses are coming they're pretty frequent, single digits. So maybe everyone is just looking at the app. A pretty clock face probably isn't important if it's coming every 5 minutes. Great. Man, slowest turn in the world. 70 degrees. Leaves are turning. We're on Dayton Street in Hamilton.
also wants to know the range and if the smaller lawn could become networked. Freeman says Flight Profiler wants to move in that direction, but it will take more research and funding. He says once the smaller units have networked cars and are put in aircraft, the DOT and FAA have the beginning of a true atmospheric infrastructure system that would dramatically improve safety. Ann Thompson, 91.7 WVXU.
Support comes from Lindner Center of Hope. 1 in 4 Americans suffers from mental illness. Mental illness and addiction can set those who struggle on a common journey in search of one thing, hope. Lindner Center of Hope offers a range of transformational services. Transformation begins with hope. You can learn more at lindnercenterofhope.org.
Support comes from Zinn's Plumbing, offering full-service plumbing including installation, repair, and maintenance, plus water purification and softening systems. Zinn's Plumbing features pipe replacement without digging trenches in the yard. Online at zinnsplumbing.com or 513-681-2501. Zinn's Plumbing makes house calls.
This traffic report supported by Speedway. Earlier wreck northbound 71 before Smith Edwards has been cleared. Eastbound 275 at Turkey Foot, there's a wreck there. There's one southbound 275 after Beachmont. Southbound 75 at Reagan, a wreck. Partly cloudy and 57 tonight. Partly mostly cloudy, 81 tomorrow. It's 76 degrees now.
From NPR News, it's All Things Considered. I'm Mary Louise Kelly.
And I'm Lisa Sheehan. In Miami, violence and revenge shooting occurs regularly as a group is prone to shootouts. The group, Hope Peacemakers, wants to steer people away from using guns. It already has financial support from the U.S. Department of Justice, and now a local health foundation has started funding their work because violence reduction is part of community well-being. From your station WLRN, Veronica Saragoga reports. The wall paint is peeling and plastic bottles dot the perimeter of a low-income housing complex in Miami called Lincoln Fields. Shanika Pierce has a delivery of diapers for a family here. She works with a group called the Peacemakers.
Hi, how are you? I brought you some Pampers for your sister. We have 2 packs of white. What you could do is you could just let your mom know that we'll supply her to her probably in the next week. Thank you. You're welcome. Thank you.
As Pierce makes her rounds, Lamont Linton walks with her. He manages the Peacemakers and says they show up regularly, trying to figure out what people here need.
If you plant the seeds now before something happens, when something happens, it's that much easier to engage and get involved because you're a familiar face. If you just show up on the scene after shooting, they're not familiar with you, you're just like the police.
Manton speaks from experience. He says he carried guns in his youth until mentors taught him he was bigger than that.
This is my way of reconciling that life that I once lived and reach some other young folks that are heading down that same path and let them know that there is another way to live, there's another way to think.
He and his team want to make Lincoln Fields a safer place to live.
My son was a victim.
Karen Roberson is a resident here.
He was walking home one day and got shot just because we live in this area. But thank God he lived. People, they out here up to no good, gang banging, gang violence, and they just, I guess, target anybody.
Roberson feels stuck at Lincoln Fields. She also grapples with a chronic mold problem. Miami, like cities across the U.S., lacks quality, affordable housing. But the Peacemakers come to listen. The group is under the Circle of Brotherhood, a nonprofit led by Lyle Muhammad.
The canvassing effort is almost like putting a caring hand over that neighborhood and that community for that day, letting them know what resources may be available.
His nonprofit received a $290,000 grant from the Health Foundation of South Florida to grow the Peacemakers team to 6 full-time and 1 part-time employees. The Health Foundation had never funded gun violence intervention in its 30-year history. Then it heard from psychology professor Roger McIntosh. He studies the effects of stress on brain health at the University of Miami. McIntosh says people who lack resources tend to internalize the stress from their problems.
You learn how to suppress as opposed to express emotions. And this obviously leads to build-up of the frustrations
that people often can't resolve because they can't access expensive professional help. Instead, they grab a gun.
Ready to draw and shoot because of that build-up. You don't necessarily know how to participate
things and all that toxic stress.
And that's the goal of the peacemakers. Help with that toxic stress. Something Olivia Eason, another peacemaker, knows about firsthand.
Growing up in urban areas was hard. You know, it's hard mentally, physically, emotionally. All we're trying to do is build relationships and get our community the help and the resources that it needs.
It's not easy work, and often done one person at a time. She approaches a man standing outside of his apartment.
You been okay? Everything been, quiet? You ever heard of the Circle of Brotherhood? They have a phenomenal message. One session will change your life. Right here, right on that corner. Yes, sir. You see it? Right up the street.
Through the health grant, the peacemakers will measure how many people they reach and the problems they encounter, in hopes they can eventually make a difference in the lack of violence this community experiences. For NPR News, I'm Veronica Zaragoza in Miami. This story comes from NPR's partnership with WRN.
Time now for My Unsung Hero, our series from the team at Hero. My Unsung Hero tells the stories of people whose kindness left a lasting impression on someone else. Today's story comes from Laura Korstensen. In 1974, when she was 21, Laura went to a concert with some co-workers. When it was over, they all piled into cars. For the ride home, she ended up in a van driven by a young man she did not know very well. It turned out he was intoxicated.
And so we start driving on this country road headed back to town, and he's weaving on the road. And I was asking him to slow down, and I remember putting my arm out on the dashboard to kind of brace. And then the next thing I remembered, I was laying on the side of the road outside of the van. The van had gone on to roll down an embankment, and I had apparently gone through the window. So I was laying on the side of the road, and I can't really imagine what I must have looked like, but I must have been a fright. There would be so much blood because of all the breaks and the severing of my femur. And I don't know how long it was, but at some point a big semi-truck pulls up on the side of the road. And these two drivers came over and asked if they could help me. And I said, yeah, and what I remember is they went back to the truck because I said I was so cold. I'm sure I was in shock and I was just shaking. And they came over and laid a blanket down on me. And again, I remember thinking at the time, oh, you're going to ruin your blanket because you'll get blood on it. And they said, it's fine. And they put the blanket over me. And I just remembered feeling so incredibly grateful. And I will never forget them. This is now 50 years ago. And I guess what I was touched by was that my being cold was the least of my troubles. But they cared enough to try to help that short-term challenge that I was facing at the moment. It was a gentle, kind gesture. And I've always kept a blanket in my trunk ever since then. Just in case.
Laura Korstensen lives in California. After the accident, she ended up staying in the hospital for 4 months. She's had years of medical complications since then, but today she is grateful to be walking. You can find more stories like this on the My Unsung Hero podcast. And to share the story of your unsung hero, visit myunsunghero.org for instructions on how to send a voice memo.